So traditionally, I think a lot of us think of the IMF as being an institution that works with lower and middle income countries, right? Emerging markets in particular. Traditionally, I should say, right? Emphasis on that word. Providing guidance on how to get your debt under control, being the lender of last resort, et cetera. What do you make of the fact that lots of advanced economies still have very large debt levels? In the United States, we are arguably running an interesting experiment with twin deficits, which is normally something that the IMF admonishes poorer countries for doing. What do you make of all of this? I mean, does the United States need an IMF program?
I think our quota would have to be really fat and big in order to help. You know, we do three things. We do what we call surveillance, which is, you know, an annual audit review and in-depth analysis of all economies around the world, the United States included, the UK, France, Germany, Japan, and you name it. And annually, we give our policy recommendations, which countries decide to either follow, be inspired by, or decide to ignore at their peril. So that's one thing. Second thing we do is, and that's massive actually, it's the fastest growing business line, if you will, that we have, and that is capacity development. We provide technical assistance, training, predominantly in low-income countries and in emerging market economies, but also to some advanced economies. Whether it's, you know, improving the debt management system, whether it's public finance management, whether it's banking regulations, we provide that, and we have lots of actually technical and training centers in Africa in particular. And the third activity we have, which is the one that we are most sort of well known for, is providing lending to countries that have massive crisis of balance of payments and that cannot get financing elsewhere. And we provide the international community money. It's a bit like a credit union, the IMF. So we provide international community money, and in consideration for that, the countries commit to improve their public finance, restore their position, and be in a situation where they can finance themselves by normal means. So I'm concerned about the increase of the debt level around the world, because if you look at where it is now, it is higher than where it was prior to 2007. And that includes sovereign and corporate in you know, many corners of the world. It's not specific to the US, it's not specific to Japan, it's not specific to you know, corporates in various countries. It's
as a
very
percent
much
of
across,
GDP, you mean?
Yeah. And the debt service is fairly low at the moment because, of course, the financing terms have been extremely favorable for the last 5 years. So the debt service is accommodating in a way, which is, you know.
But that may change.
It may change, and that's where we might have difficulties, yes.
Uh-huh.
Which is why we are recommending one thing very clearly, very simply. We say, because growth is good, we say it's when the sun is shining, please fix the roof and deal with you. Build buffers, use your fiscal space to actually do the structural reforms that will improve your overall productivity and your capacity to resist.
How receptive are advanced economies to that advice?
You know, first of all, many of them have incredibly talented economists, and sometimes in some in the case of some countries, many more than we have at the IMF. And the US is one example where clearly the Treasury Department has you know, a number of economists which is largely superior to the US desk that we have at the IMF. But I think they like to at least confront their views. They, I think, respect our analysis. They don't always agree with it. And you know, I found myself with many countries in a position to actually argue with them why we think that this approach, or, you know, combination of fiscal counter-cyclical policy is actually needed for them to rebuild their buffers, and where they say, well, not sure that we should do that now. Mm-hmm. When, you know, I was a finance minister for 4 years. It's very tempting when you have a little bit of surplus, a little bit of fiscal space, to actually say to your colleagues or to the leader or the prime minister, whoever, who is keen to, finance things, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's social programs, it's tempting to say, okay, all right. But sometimes it's not okay.
Or sometimes you don't even have the fiscal space.
That's true.
And you make
room.
That
is true.